strange encounter in the rain. The city was quiet that night. Only the sound of rain hitting the empty streets filled the air. Tall buildings stood like sleeping giants, their windows dark. Neon lights flickered in the distance, painting the wet road in red and blue. A man named Daniel walked home alone. His jacket was soaked, and water dripped from his hair. He pulled the collar up, trying to block the cold wind. It was late, and he had taken the long way home, away from the busy areas. Daniel liked the quiet, but tonight the quiet felt strange. As he passed under a broken street lamp, he stopped. There, in the middle of the sidewalk, was a little girl. She couldn't be more than 8 years old. Her clothes were wet, her hair clung to her pale face, and she stood completely still. Daniel looked around. There was no one else, no parent, no passerby, only the girl. He stepped closer, his voice soft. "Hey, are you lost?" The girl slowly turned her head. Her eyes, they were strange. They glowed faintly blue, like 2 small pieces of ice catching the light. She didn't answer. Daniel tried again. "It's raining hard. You'll get sick. Where's your home?" The girl opened her mouth, but her voice was barely a whisper. "They will come for me." Her words sent a chill down his spine. Who was they? Daniel glanced down the street. The rain made everything blurry, but far away, he thought he saw movement. Dark shapes, floating in the air. Like drones, he looked back at the girl. "Come on, you can't stay here." She didn't move. Daniel reached for her hand. It was cold, too cold for a child. She finally took a step forward. As they walked, Daniel kept glancing behind. The floating shapes were still there, and they seemed closer. They reached Daniel's small apartment. It wasn't much, just a single room with a bed, a chair, and a tiny kitchen in the corner. He closed the door and locked it. The girl stood in the middle of the room, dripping water on the floor. Daniel grabbed a towel and handed it to her. She took it without a word. "What's your name?" he asked. The girl hesitated. Then, in that same soft voice, she said, "Arya." "That's a nice name, Arya. I'm Daniel." She nodded, but didn't look at him. Daniel made her a cup of warm tea. As she drank, he noticed something on her wrist, a mark. Not a bruise, not a tattoo. It was a glowing symbol, faint but visible under the skin. It looked like a circle with lines running through it, moving, shifting, like it was alive. "What's that?" he asked, pointing. Arya quickly pulled her sleeve down. "They can track me with it," she whispered. Daniel's heart began to race. Track her? Who were these people? He remembered the drones in the rain. He got up and peeked through the curtain. The street below was empty. At first, then, from the fog of rain, he saw one of them. A black drone, shaped like an insect, hovering. Silently, its red scanning light moved across the buildings. Daniel stepped back. He turned to Arya. "You weren't joking, were you?" She shook her head slowly. Her eyes looked older than her age, full of fear and something else. Sadness. "Why are they after you?" Daniel asked. Arya put the cup down. "Because I'm not like other people." Before Daniel could ask more, the lights in his apartment flickered. Then, darkness. The power was out. He froze. Outside, through the faint light of the neon signs, he saw a tall figure in a black coat. The figure stood across the street, perfectly still, watching his window. Then, knock, knock, knock. Someone was at his door. Daniel's breath caught. He looked at Arya. Her hands trembled, and she shook her head violently. "Don't open it," she whispered. The knocking came again, slower this time. And then, a voice. "Daniel, open the door." It wasn't a stranger's voice. It was calm, almost familiar. But Daniel didn't recognize it. The way the person said his name made his skin crawl. He stepped toward the door, his footsteps soft on the floor. He pressed his ear against the cold wood. Outside, the rain still fell, but now it was mixed with a faint, humming sound, like machines. "Waiting, Daniel," the voice said again. "I just want to talk." Daniel's hand hovered over the lock. Something deep inside told him not to open it. Arya's voice was almost a cry now. "They found us. Please, don't let them in." Daniel stepped back from the door. The voice outside went silent. Only the sound of rain remained. But in that silence, a soft metallic click echoed from the lock. Someone was trying to open it. Daniel's mind raced. If they came in, they'd take Arya, and if what she said was true, he might never see her again. He glanced at the window. The figure in the black coat was gone. The drone's red light now moved across his wall through the curtains. Arya stood frozen, the glow on her wrist getting brighter. "Daniel," she whispered, "they're here." And then the door handle began to turn. The girl's secret, the door handle kept turning slowly. Daniel's breath felt heavy in his chest. He grabbed the closest thing he could, a metal pipe, from under the sink. Then, silence. The turning stopped. Daniel waited, his eyes on the door, ready to swing if it opened. Outside, the rain kept falling, but the strange mechanical humming was louder now. Suddenly, dash, thump. A shadow moved past the window. Then, a faint, distant click. And the lights flickered back on. Arya's eyes darted around the room. They've gone. For now, Daniel didn't believe it. They were just here. Why would they leave? Arya didn't answer right away. Instead, she pulled up her sleeve again and showed him the glowing mark on her wrist. It was brighter than before, almost pulsing like a heartbeat. "They don't need to stay," she whispered. "They can always find me, anywhere." Daniel stared at the strange symbol. It wasn't just light, it was moving inside her skin, like living metal. "What is that?" he asked. Arya sat down, her voice low. "It's a locator and a lock. A lock. It keeps me from leaving this city. If I go too far, it will kill me." Daniel's stomach tightened. Kill her. She looked so small, so fragile, but her voice carried a weight far beyond her years. "Who put that in you?" he asked. She looked up at him, and for the first time there was anger in her glowing eyes. "The facility, they made me, not born me." Daniel froze. "What do you mean, made you?" Arya took a deep breath. "I'm part human, part machine. But I'm not like the others. I escaped because I started remembering things. Things they didn't put in me." "Like what?" A woman's face. Her voice. "She called me. Her daughter. I think she's my real mother. But they told me she was dead." Daniel felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't just some random child in trouble. This was something much bigger. Arya. Those people outside. The woman in the silver uniform. Is she from the facility too? Arya's hands clenched the towel. "Yes, she's not my mother. She's a copy of her. They made her to trick me." Daniel frowned. "Why go through all that trouble?" Arya's eyes softened with fear. "Because I have something they want. Something inside me." Before Daniel could ask, a faint beep 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 sound came from her wrist. She gasped and covered it quickly. "They know I'm here. We have to move." Daniel grabbed his coat and looked out the window. The street was empty again, but he didn't trust it. "We can take the back alley," he said. They slipped out quietly, moving through the narrow, rain-soaked lanes behind his building. Puddles reflected the neon signs above, bending the light into strange shapes. Every sound felt too loud, the splash of their shoes, the distant rumble of a transport train, the faint worry of something mechanical in the shadows. Halfway through the alley, Daniel stopped. "Wait. Look." At the far end, a tall figure. stepped into view, the same black coat as before. The hood covered their face, but their head tilted slowly toward Daniel and Arya. Without a word, the figure lifted a hand and the air between them shimmered like heat over a road. Daniel's skin prickled. "What is that?" Arya's voice was tight. "It's a capture field. If it touches us, we can't move." They turned and ran the other way. The alley opened into a marketplace, closed for the night. Empty stalls, hanging tarps, the smell of wet metal and oil behind them. The humming grew louder. Daniel glanced back. 3 drones zipped into the market, their red eyes scanning fast. This way. Arya pulled him toward a gap between 2 old vending machines. It led into a service tunnel. The tunnel was dark, lit only by Arya's faint wrist glow. It smelled of dust and damp stone. Daniel's footsteps echoed too much, making him uneasy. Finally, they reached a heavy metal door. Arya tapped on it 3 times in a strange rhythm. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a panel slid open. A pair of eyes looked out, human eyes, but cautious. "Who's with you, Arya?" a deep voice asked. "A friend," she replied quickly. "They followed me again. We need to hide." The door opened just enough for them to slip inside. It was a small underground room, walls lined with old computer equipment and maps. Daniel looked around. "Where are we?" "A place they don't know about," Arya said. "The old rebel hideout." Daniel turned to ask more, but then he saw it on the wall. Among faded photos of past missions and strange machines, there was a picture of him. Younger, wearing a black jacket, standing next to a woman with the same glowing blue eyes as Arya. Daniel's blood went cold. "Why is this here?" Arya looked at him carefully. "That's her," she said softly. "My real mother." Daniel's throat tightened. He remembered the woman. He remembered the night she disappeared years ago in a government raid. He had thought she was dead. Arya stepped closer. "They said she's gone, but I think she's But I think she's still alive. And I think you're the only one who can help me find her." Before Daniel could answer, the hideout's lights flickered. A static hiss filled the old speakers. A voice came through, cold and metallic. "Arya, bring yourself out, or your mother dies tonight." Daniel and Arya locked eyes. The facility wasn't just hunting them, it had her. A dangerous choice. The old speakers crackled again. The cold, metallic voice repeated, "Arya, bring yourself out, or your mother dies tonight." The room went silent. Only the faint hum of the computers remained. Daniel stared at Arya. Her small hands trembled. "They have her," she whispered. Daniel's mind raced. If this was true, the facility had captured her real mother. But how? The rebels had sworn she was safe. The voice returned, sharper now. "You have 3 minutes. Step outside. Alone." The rebel in the room, a man with a scar across his jaw, shook his head. "It's a trap. You go out there, you're done." Arya's eyes filled with tears, but there was something else in them, determination. "She's my mother. I can't let them." Daniel stepped in front of her. "You're not going anywhere. Not until we know it's real." The rebel tapped on an old control panel, switching the security cameras. A grainy image filled the screen in the middle of the rainy street outside. A woman stood, hands bound, knees on the wet ground. Her hair was tangled, her clothes soaked. Even through the blur of the camera, Daniel felt his stomach twist. It was her. The same eyes. The same face from the photo on the wall. Arya stepped closer to the screen, her voice trembling. "Mom." Then another figure appeared beside the woman, tall, wearing a silver uniform. The hood fell back, revealing a pale, sharp-featured face. Daniel recognized her instantly. The woman who had come to his door last night. the silver uniform. Woman spoke directly to the camera. Daniel, bring her to me, or the woman dies here, in the rain. Daniel's grip on the metal pipe in his hand tightened. This wasn't just about Arya anymore. This was about a promise he made years ago, a promise to protect her mother. The rebel cursed under his breath. They're forcing your hand. If you give them the girl, it's over. But if you don't... Daniel turned to Arya. You trust me? She nodded, though her lip trembled. Yes. Then, listen to me. We're not walking into their trap. We're going to flip it. Daniel opened an old weapons crate in the corner of the hideout. Inside were scrapsy MP grenades, pulse disruptors, a few outdated blasters. He grabbed 2 EMPs and handed one to the scarred rebel. Take the back tunnel, Daniel said. Circle around the street. When you see my signal, you take out their drones. The rebel grunted. You better not get killed. Daniel knelt in front of Arya. They want you to come out alone. You're going to. But you'll have this. He handed her a small device, no bigger than a coin. It will short the lock in your wrist for 30 seconds. That's our window. Arya swallowed hard. What if they hurt her before? They won't. They need her alive as leverage. Minutes later, Arya stepped out into the rain. The silver uniform woman smiled faintly, like a predator seeing prey walk into its jaws. You've come, she said. Her voice was calm to calm. Arya looked past her at the bound woman. Let her go. The silver uniform woman's eyes glinted. After you're secured. She reached for Arya's wrist, and that's when Daniel's voice cut through the sit. Ruby kiss, only ruby kiss. Only ruby kiss has the luxurious texture that glides on my lottie and live.loss tease. I can't receive. I see /our loss sees. /alive. You see plays / kuchlixt. We see / alive. We see / my way. Rain, not happening. From the shadows of the alley, Daniel stepped into view, pulse disruptor raised. The silver uniform woman's smile didn't fade. You think you can stop me, Daniel? You couldn't stop us then, and you can't now. Daniel's jaw tightened. Back then, I didn't know what you were. The rebel's voice came through Daniel's earpiece. Drones in sight. Waiting on your mark. Daniel nodded to Arya. She pressed the coin-sized device to her wrist. It buzzed faintly and the glowing mark under her skin flickered, then went dark. The silver uniform woman noticed instantly. What did you, Daniel, fired? Blinding blue pulse shot through the air, forcing the woman to stumble back. Now? Daniel shouted. The rebel tossed an EMP grenade. It exploded midair, and all 3 drones above the street dropped like dead insects into the water. Chaos erupted. The silver uniform woman drew a blade that shimmered unnaturally. Daniel blocked her strike with a disruptor's barrel, sparks flying as metal met energy. Arya dashed to her mother, trying to cut the bindings with a shard of glass from the street. The woman gasped, her voice weak but urgent. Arya, run. Daniel pushed back against the silver uniform woman, every blow shaking his arms. She moved faster than any human should, too precise. It's too strong. Then she caught his arm, twisted it, and slammed him against the wall. You can't save them both, she hissed. Her eyes flicked toward Arya. Choose. Daniel's vision blurred, rain stinging his eyes. He forced himself to stand. I don't choose. I fight. With his free hand, he grabbed the last EMP from his belt and slammed it into her chest. The shockwave sent her sprawling into the street, her blade skittering across the wet ground. Daniel ran to Arya and the bound woman. Go, move. They dashed toward the alley. Behind them, the silver uniform woman rose again, her body twitching. From the EMP blast, she didn't chase them, but her voice carried through the rain. "This isn't over, Daniel. She belongs to us." Back inside the hideout, the rebels sealed the door. Daniel and Arya's mother sat against the wall, catching their breath. But Daniel couldn't shake what he had seen in the woman's eyes, the cold certainty that no matter where they went, the facility would find them. And for the first time, he wasn't sure they could win. The escape the hideout felt smaller now. Rain drummed above like a warning, each drop echoing in the silence. Daniel stood by the door, his pulse still racing from the fight outside. Arya's mother sat on the floor, her wrists raw from the bindings. She tried to smile at her daughter, but it was weak. "I didn't think I'd see you again," she whispered. Arya hugged her tightly. "You're safe now." Daniel wished he could believe that. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the silver uniform woman standing in the rain, unshaken by the EMP blast. She wouldn't give up. The rebel with the scar paced the room. They'll be swarming this area soon. The facility won't stop until they take the girl back, or kill all of us. Daniel didn't flinch. "Then we leave before they lock down the sector." The rebel stopped pacing. "You're talking about the tunnels." Daniel nodded. "They're the only way out without crossing open streets." The scarred man frowned. "They're not safe. Half of them collapsed years ago. And if you get lost down there, P didn't." "Finish the sentence." Arya's mother spoke, her voice urgent. "We stay, they will find us. The tunnels are dangerous, but staying here is worse." Daniel agreed. He grabbed a small map from the wall and spread it on the table. The paper was faded, but the winding network of underground routes was still visible. "We take this path," he said, tracing his finger along a narrow line. "It'll lead us to the east gate, beyond the city scanners." They packed quickly water, rations, a small first aid kit. Daniel gave Arya his jacket. "Stay close to me, no matter what." The rebel opened a hidden hatch in the floor, revealing a steep ladder leading into darkness. Cold air rose from below, carrying the smell of rust and damp stone. "Once you're down there," the rebel said, "you're on your own. I'll stay and slow them down." Daniel gripped his shoulder. "Thank you." The rebel smirked. "Just make sure it's worth it." The ladder creaked under their weight as they descended. The tunnel below was narrow, the ceiling low enough to make Daniel hunch his shoulders. Pipes ran along the walls, dripping water into shallow puddles. Their footsteps echoed. The only light came from a small lantern Daniel carried. Shadows stretched along the walls, twisting with every movement. Arya walked between Daniel and her mother. She held his hand tightly, her other hand clutching the faintly glowing mark on her wrist. They moved in silence for what felt like hours. But then, a sound broke the quiet, a faint clicking. Metallic, coming from behind them. Daniel stopped. "Keep moving," he whispered. The clicking grew louder. It wasn't just one set of footsteps, there were several, and they were fast. A light flashed down the tunnel behind them. Daniel turned, raising the lantern just enough to see shapes. Moving in the darkness, tall, thin machines with spider-like legs. Their eyes glowed red, scanning the tunnel walls. "Run," Daniel said. They sprinted through the winding tunnel. The sound of the machines chasing them grew sharper, echoing like a swarm of knives scraping the ground. Arya's mother stumbled, but Daniel caught her before she fell. They reached a fork in the tunnel, two paths stretching into darkness. "Which way?" Arya gasped. Daniel hesitated, glancing at the map. Both paths were marked, but one led through a maintenance chamber. The other straight into an old flood zone. The clicking behind them was louder now. Daniel chose the left path. They ran until the tunnel widened into a vast underground chamber. The room was filled with old machinery, giant fans, rusted control panels, and massive pipes stretching into darkness. The sound of rushing water echoed in the distance. Arya stopped suddenly. "Daniel," she whispered. Her glowing wrist mark was flickering again. Before he could respond, one of the spider-like machines crawled through the tunnel entrance. Its metal claws dug into the floor as it moved toward them. Daniel aimed his pulse disruptor and fired. The shot hit the machine's leg, snapping it, but it kept coming, dragging itself forward. Then another one appeared. And another. "Go!" Daniel shouted. He pulled a small EMP from his pocket and threw it toward the tunnel entrance. The blast lit the chamber in blue light, knocking 2 of the machines down, but 3 more were climbing. Through the pipes above, Arya's mother spotted an old service lift on the far side of the chamber. It might still work. She yelled. They ran to it, ducking under falling debris as the machines tore into the ceiling. Daniel slammed the lifts. "Control panel," it groaned. Then slowly began to rise. One of the machines leaped from the pipes, landing on the platform with them. Its claws reached for Arya. Daniel tackled it, shoving it back into the pit below. The lift shook violently, but kept moving upward. Finally, they reached another tunnel wider, with faint light at the far end. They ran toward it. The air grew fresher. The sound of rain returned. When they emerged, they found themselves at the edge of the city, near the east gate. Beyond it, the open wasteland stretched under the night sky. Daniel turned to look back in the shadows of the tunnel. Dozens of red eyes glowed. The machines didn't follow them out. Not yet. Arya's mother touched his arm. "They won't." "Stop, Daniel. Even out here." Daniel looked at Arya. Her glowing wrist mark was steady now, but it felt like a beacon. Somehow, the facility would always know where she was, and deep down, he knew this escape was only the beginning. The truth about the mother, the wasteland, stretched out in silence. The city's neon glow faded behind them, swallowed by darkness. Only the soft hiss of the wind moved across the cracked earth. Daniel led the way, scanning the horizon. They had put distance between themselves and the east gate, but he knew the facility wouldn't give up. If anything, the hunt would get worse. Arya walked beside her mother, holding her hand tightly. The woman's steps were slow, her breathing uneven. "Okay." She was still weak from captivity. Finally, they reached a cluster of half-collapsed buildings, remnants of a town that had been abandoned years ago. Daniel found a narrow entrance into one of the structures, a safe place to rest for a while. They lit a small lamp. The flickering light cast long shadows on the cracked walls. Daniel sat across from the woman, studying her. He hadn't spoken to her directly since the rescue. Too much had happened, and now, too many questions burned inside him. "I thought you were dead," he said quietly. 7 years ago, during the raid, no one made it out." The woman's eyes softened. "I almost didn't. They took me that night. The facility wanted something from me, something only I had." Daniel frowned. "What?" She glanced at Arya, then back to him. "They wanted her." Daniel's chest tightened. "You're saying they planned her before she was even born?" "Yes," the woman said. "They took my DNA. They wanted to create a hybrid human enough to think and feel, but engineered to hold something no ordinary human could." Daniel's voice was tense. "And what is that?" "A map," she said simply. Daniel stared at her. "A map, not of a place," she explained. "Of a technology. One so old it predates the cities themselves. They call it the Architect's Code. If unlocked, it could build or destroy entire worlds." Daniel's mind reeled. "And they put it inside her." The woman nodded. "In her DNA. Hidden, broken into fragments. They can't take it by force. They need her alive to decode it." Arya's voice was quiet. "I started remembering things. Images I've never seen. Machines I've never touched. I think." That's the code. Daniel rubbed his face. And what does this have to do with me? The woman hesitated, her gaze steady. Because you're the other half of it. The words hit Daniel like a blow. Me, yes, she said. Before the raid, you and I were part of the rebellion. You don't remember everything, because they erased it. But you had knowledge of the code's activation. It was locked in your mind the same way it's locked in her body. Daniel shook his head. That's impossible. I would know if would. You? She interrupted gently. You've had dreams, haven't you? Places you've never been, machines you've never seen. Yet they feel familiar. Daniel froze. He had dreamed of strange cities, vast machines rising out of the ground, symbols glowing in the air. He dismissed them as imagination. The woman's voice was soft now. They weren't dreams. They were memories. Silence settled in the small room. The wind outside howled through the broken walls. Finally, Daniel spoke. If this is true, then the facility isn't just after her. They're after me too. Yes, the woman said. And if they get both of you, they'll have the complete code. Daniel looked at Arya. She was watching him with wide, unblinking eyes. You could have told me sooner, he said. The woman's expression was pained. If I had, you might have tried to find me, and they would have caught you. Daniel's voice was sharper now. And now? Now we just keep running. No, she said firmly. Now we fight. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Fight? With what? They have an army. We have 3 people. Not just us, the woman said. The rebellion isn't gone. It went underground. They've been waiting for a reason to rise again. Daniel wasn't convinced. And you think we're the reason? Yes, she said. Because without you and Arya, they can't win or survive. Before Daniel could respond, a sound broke the air, a low hum growing louder. Arya stiffened. They're here. Daniel moved to the window. Far in the distance, lights moved across the wasteland. 3 black hovercrafts gliding silently toward them. They tracked us, he muttered. How? We disabled the beacon. The woman's eyes darkened. They didn't track the beacon, they tracked me. Daniel turned sharply. What do you mean? She pulled up her sleeve. On her arm was a faint scar, barely visible. They implanted me before I escaped. I thought it was just for monitoring my health in captivity. I was wrong. Daniel swore under his breath. We have to move. Now. They grabbed their supplies and slipped out the back of the building. The wind cut cold against their faces as they moved through the ruins. The hovercrafts drew closer, the hum becoming a roar. Daniel led them into a narrow canyon between collapsed towers. The shadows swallowed them, but the lights from above swept across the ground. Searching, Arya clung to her mother's hand. Daniel scanned the terrain, searching for an escape route. Then he saw an old transit shaft leading deep underground. He pried the rusted hatch open. Go, both of you. The woman hesitated. What about you? I'll follow. Just move. Arya and her mother climbed down. Daniel glanced back toward the canyon mouth. A black-clad figure stepped into view, the silver uniform woman. Her voice carried easily through the wind. You can't run forever, Daniel. You know how this ends. Daniel's grip tightened on his disruptor. Maybe, but not tonight. He dropped into the shaft, slamming the hatch shut above him. The darkness swallowed them as the sound of the hovercrafts filled the air above and deep inside him. He knew the truth about the past was dangerous. But the truth about the future might be worse. The reunion, the old transit shaft smelled of rust and stale air. Their footsteps echoed in the narrow tube as they climbed down into darkness. Daniel's lantern cast weak light, just enough to see. The metal rungs stretching below, after what felt like forever, The shaft opened into a massive underground tunnel. Faded rebel markings were painted along the walls, red arrows, scratch symbols, and warnings written in a language only the rebellion used. Arya's mother touched one of the marks. "They're still alive," she whispered. "They've been here recently." Daniel stayed cautious. The last time he trusted a safe place, it nearly got them all killed. The tunnel led them to a huge set of steel doors. They were rusted, but the locking mechanism was new. Daniel knocked 3 times in a code he remembered from years ago. A pause, then a voice from the other side. "Identify yourself." Daniel hesitated. "It's Daniel." The voice was silent for a moment, then the doors creaked open. A tall man in a dark coat stepped out. His eyes widened when he saw them. "Daniel, we thought you were dead." "Not yet," Daniel said flatly. "We need shelter." The man glanced at Arya and her mother. "You'd better come inside. Quickly." The doors closed behind them with a heavy clang. Inside, the rebel base stretched across what looked like an old subway station. People worked at computer terminals, repaired weapons, and sorted crates of supplies. The air smelled of oil and metal, but there was life here, human voices, human faces. Arya looked around with wide eyes. She had never seen so many people who weren't trying to capture her. One of the rebels, a woman with short black hair, approached. Her gaze went straight to Arya's glowing wrist mark. "That's her," she murmured. "The one from the old plan?" Daniel's stomach tightened. "What old plan?" The black-haired woman didn't answer. Instead, she turned to Arya's mother. "You brought her, after all these years." The base leader, heavy-set man with a cybernetic arm, joined them. His voice was deep, steady. "Daniel, we've been fighting the facility for a long time, but we always knew the war would only end when the key returned." Daniel frowned. "Key?" The leader pointed at Arya. "Her and you. Together, you're the final piece of the code. We can use it to wipe out the facility completely." Daniel's instincts bristled. "You mean use her as a weapon?" The leader didn't flinch. "Call it what you want. She's the only chance we have." Arya clutched Daniel's arm. "I don't want to hurt anyone." Daniel crouched down to meet her eyes. "You won't, not if I can help it." But the leader's voice was cold. "It's not about what she wants. If we don't use her, they will. And if they use her, the world won't survive." Arya's mother stepped forward. "She's still a child. We can find another way." The leader cut her off. "We've tried every other way. We've lost too many people. The war is at its breaking point." Tension filled the air. Daniel could feel eyes on them from every corner of the base. Some rebels looked at Arya with awe, others with fear. Then, from the far side of the room, a familiar voice spoke. "Well, well. Look who finally came back." Daniel turned on. Froze. It was the scarred rebel from the hideout. The one who had stayed behind to slow them down. Except now, he wasn't wearing rebel gear. He was in a silver-trimmed jacket, the kind used by the facility's infiltrators. "You?" Daniel said slowly. "You led them to us." The scarred man smiled thinly. "I led you to them." Big difference. The leader's cybernetic arm clicked as he stepped back, confusion flickering in his eyes. "What is this?" The scarred man shrugged. "Double pay, double loyalty. I told the facility exactly where you'd be, and now they're already on their way." The room erupted in shouts. Some rebels reached for their weapons, others backed toward the exits. Daniel pulled Arya behind him, pulse disruptor ready. "How much time do we have?" he demanded. The scarred man smirked. 2 minutes, maybe less." The leader slammed a fist on the table. "Evacuate the children. Lock down the south tunnels." Chaos erupted as alarms blared. Red warning lights flashed across the base. Daniel turned to Arya's mother. "We can't stay, not when they know exactly where we are." She nodded, gripping Arya's hand. "Where do we go?" Daniel glanced at the leader. "There's another exit." The leader's face was grim. "There's a maintenance lift that leads to the old power station, but it's crawling with security drones." Daniel's eyes hardened. "Then we move fast." They pushed through the panicked crowd, heading for the lift. Behind them, the sound of gunfire echoed through the base as the facility's forces poured. In the scarred man's voice carried above the noise, "You can run all you like, Daniel, but in the end, you'll bring her right back to us." The lift doors slid open, revealing a dark shaft. Daniel stepped inside first, scanning the shadows. "All clear. Let's go." Arya and her mother stepped in after him. The leader stayed behind to hold the line, his cybernetic arm already shifting into a mounted weapon. As the lift began to rise, the base below filled with chaos blaster fire. Explosions, shouts. Daniel kept his eyes on Arya, making sure she stayed close. But deep down, he knew the reunion with the rebels hadn't saved them. It only painted a bigger target. On their backs, and somewhere above, the facility was waiting. The Proposa, the old maintenance lift, rattled as it climbed through darkness. Metal groaned, chains clinked, and every shutter felt like it might send them falling. Daniel stood in front, disruptor in hand, eyes fixed on the small slit of light above. Arya stood between him and her mother, her small hand gripping his jacket. Her mother's breathing was uneven. She leaned against the wall, her face pale in the dim light. She had been strong through the tunnels and the chase. But now Daniel could see it. The wound she'd taken in the safe house was worse than she'd admitted. The lift jerked to a stop. They stepped out into the shell of the old power station. It was massive towering generators covered in dust. Broken glass scattered across the floor, and huge windows showing the wasteland outside. The wind howled through cracks in the walls. "This is as far as we go without transport," Daniel said. "If we can get one of the old bikes working, we can move before they catch up." Arya's mother touched his arm. "We need to talk. Alone." Daniel hesitated. "This isn't the time. It's the only time," she said, her voice low. They stepped away, leaving Arya to explore the dusty floor near the entrance. Her mother's expression was serious. But there was something else, fear, and a strange resolve. "Daniel," she began softly, "we both know I won't make it much longer. The wound? It's not just a cut. They poisoned the blade." Daniel's chest tightened. "No, we can find someone." She shook her head. "Facility made sure there's no cure outside their labs. If I go there, I'll never come back." Daniel stared at her, unwilling to accept it. "I'm not letting you give up. I'm not giving up," she said firmly. "I'm making sure she survives." Her gaze drifted to Arya, who was now crouched near an old generator, tracing her glowing wrist mark with her fingers. "She's the most valuable child in the world, Daniel. The facility will never stop hunting her, and the rebellion will never stop trying to use her." Daniel's voice was low. "I'll protect her." Her eyes met his. "Not as a friend. Not as an old comrade. I want you to be her father, legally, in every way." Daniel froze. "What?" "If something happens to me, you'll have the authority to keep her safe, to move her, to hide her. Without that, she's just a target with no protection in the eyes of any faction." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "This isn't something you ask in the middle of a war." "It's the only time I have left," she said, her voice breaking for the first time. "I trust you. I always have. Back then, before they erased parts of your memory, you were the only one I trusted with my life. And now, I trust you with hers." Daniel's thoughts raced. "No. The image of the silver uniform woman flashed in his mind. The red-eyed machines. The scarred man's betrayal. The endless chase. If he said yes, his life would change forever. He'd be tied to Arya in a way that no war, no code, no facility could break, and it would paint the largest target possible on his back. Before he could answer, a sound shattered the moment, the distant whine of engines. Daniel's instincts kicked in. They've found us. Arya's mother grabbed his arm. Promise me first, Daniel, please. Daniel met her eyes. There was no time to think, no time to weigh the danger. Only time to decide. I promise, he said. Relief washed over her face. Then get her out of here. Daniel ran to Arya and scooped her into his arms. Hold on tight. She clung to him. What's happening? Trouble. The engines grew louder. Dust shook loose from the ceiling. A beam of white light swept through the station's broken windows. Arya's mother pulled a small device from her Paquita detonator. Daniel's eyes widened. No, you're not staying. I'll slow them down, she said, stepping back toward the entrance. Long enough for you to escape. Daniel's mind screamed against it, but the look in her eyes told him there was no stopping her. She pressed something into his hand, a thin silver chain with a data crystal attached. This holds the part of the code I carried. The other half is an Arya. Keep them together, always. Then she was gone, disappearing into the shadows of the ruined station. The engines roared closer. Shouts echoed through the metal halls. Daniel bolted for the far side of the building, where an old maintenance bike sat half buried in debris. He dropped Arya onto the seat, yanked the cover off the engine, and prayed it would start. Behind them, the first blast hits a flash of white light shaking the walls. The bike sputtered, then roared to life. Daniel kicked it into gear. Hold on. They shot out of the side exit, just as the front of the station erupted in a wall of fire. The blast lit the night sky, and in that moment, Daniel knew Arya's mother was gone. They sped across the wasteland, the bike's engine screaming, the wind tearing at Daniel's face. Arya's small arms wrapped tight around his waist. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just held on. Daniel glanced at the silver chain in his hand, its crystal glowing faintly in the moonlight. He had made a promise. And now, no matter where, they ran, no matter who came for them. He was not just Daniel the survivor. He was Daniel the father. And this was only the beginning.